Greetings, Dr. Miller. My name is James Lewis, and the example that I would like to use as a speaker failing to connect or adapt to an audience would be President Trump on his national emergency. In recent news, President Trump has declared a national emergency for his plans to build a wall around the border and attempts to keep immigrants, for example, Mexicans, out of the United States. President Trump has called or declared this national emergency, possibly because of his disappointment in the timeline in which he's in. The disappointment of his plan could have caused him to declare the state of emergency. President Trump has used some very interesting words and phrases in his speech to declare the national emergency. He actually went to the border to deliver his speech, and I jotted down some interesting phrases in order to support my thesis. One of the words he used were invasion. Now, when delivering a speech about why you should get a wall built in order to keep out a certain group of people, and you use the word invade, you have to keep in mind that there may be someone in the audience, either immediate audience or distant audience, who could take offense to the word invade. Now, I can understand his target audience, him using that word could possibly catch their attention. But because he is the President of the United States, every word he speaks about the United States is targeted toward American citizens. So with that being said, the word invade would make me feel as if I were a Mexican, as if I am intruding on a territory not for the greater good, but to ruin it, to ruin a vision of the Make America Great Again phrase or slogan, which is his whole platform. Moving on, he also uses the phrase president has the power when speaking to an audience of minorities, you are speaking to a minority audience, because I am also in the audience and I am also a part of the minority crowd. When speaking to the minority, the word power has been known to infuriate and as well as intimidate the lower class. The word power, by the president using the word power, it insinuates that he has the power to do whatever he wants to do. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. And he doesn't need the minorities like me, because the word power doesn't sound to me as if there's someone with help or someone that needs help. The word power gives a God complex to humans that use it for themselves. Moving on, my last point. He said that I didn't need to do this, but I'd rather do this much faster. End quote. I found that to be interesting and also contradicting, because the first question that came to my head when he said that was, if you don't need to do this and you just rather do it much faster, why are you doing this at all? I found that interesting because not only did he insinuate that he's in a rush to build a wall, but he insinuated that he doesn't need to call the state of emergency. He just called it simply because he rather do it much faster. He rather the wall be built sooner than later. And to me, for a president to call state of emergency on something that is unnecessary comes off to me as if he's unnecessary. Because every time he calls a state of emergency from now on, it's going to be something in my mind that plays back and say, does he really need to be doing this right now? And does he think he needs to be doing this right now? Is anything that he considers an emergency for me? There are a few questions that ponder my mind as I listen to Trump, his take on the national emergency, his reasoning behind it. But most importantly, what's most interesting is that his audience and his word choices in order to connect to his audience is, I don't believe, or I find it hard to believe that he really thinks about what he says before he says them. Simply because if he did, the few phrases and few words that I've jotted down upon watching his speech probably wouldn't have been said unless he has a different motive. Unless his motive isn't to, in fact, reach his goals, but to bring awareness to not only him, but his particular party and his supporters, what they stand for, what they represent. And to me, I see exclusion versus inclusion. That America should remain America, and America has somehow lost the greatness that it once had, and we're striving to achieve that greatness. And in order to achieve that greatness, we must exclude the invaders. We must exclude the foreigners or the aliens or whatever synonym would fit best for this particular speech. And it implies to me that maybe, just maybe, if he had it his way, then he could build this country on the foundation, or keep building on the foundation that was already here. And to the minorities, which are people like myself, African American, this country was never great for my ancestors. We want to work on improving it. We want to make a new America, but not necessarily the same America again. This concludes my presentation.